Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with a guest that I've actually never had on. I've been on his show before. MC Lobshore is a wealth strategist, educator, and financial freedom fighter. I love it. And he's the president and CEO of Producers Wealth and creator and the host of the popular and top-rated and investing podcast, Cashflow Ninja. Love the name. Cashflowninja.com is the website. MC Lobshore, thanks for coming on the show, the Cashflow Ninja.
Excited to be with you, Kenneth. Great to connect again.
Absolutely. Well, you're a first-time guest. If you would, why don't we get started by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing what you do?
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Africa. So I live in the United States now, but I came to the United States around about 2001. So, and one of the reasons that I mentioned I'm from South Africa is I grew up in a very interesting time during South Africa's history as well. We literally went from one form or shape of a government over to and transitioned over to another, and that happened when I was relatively young, quite young. So there was a lot of things happening, a lot of changes very, very quickly. And, it really played a massive role of who I am today and how I saw the world, because I just realized how nothing that you've been told is as it's presented as, right? So to use an example, just during those periods for folks that might find this interesting, we learned one form of history, right? So then you would, now that the new government's in charge, they released President Nelson Mandela from prison in 1991. 1994, there was a democratically election held. He was sworn in as the president. And then all of a sudden, you go back to school and they say, everything that you learned about history, it didn't exactly happen as we told you. There was another side of it. So it had a profound impact on me to always, at that stage, it was a very big wake-up call, which I was happy to have that early in my life, realizing that, wow, there's not just two sides to every story. There's maybe three or four or five. And to seek the truth in all areas of your life is of cardinal importance, and to critically evaluate all of the different viewpoints, right? So
True.
Yeah, so I think that had a profound impact. And I came to the United States in 2001. I was an athlete, played sports in a national city-based league here up until 2007. So I was a member of the U.S. men's national player pool in rugby. So up until 2007. And as I was doing that and traveling for sports, I always liked to read and study. Came across a purple book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki that my mom actually gave to me around about the year 99 or 2000. So I started investing, very, very early. Around about 2001, got into real estate, and that's where my journey really started. Dived into investing, wealth creation, and of course, when you dive into that sphere, you try to learn about money, the medium of exchange that you're dealing with. So you come across the creature from Jekyll Island, and you learn more about how money works, the monetary system works, and so forth. Bringing that forward to today from an investing perspective and asset management standpoint. As you mentioned, Kenneth, I'm the creator and host of the Cashflow Ninja podcast, where we look at ways at how to create cash flow from all asset classes and also different wealth creation strategies. And then I'm also, the CEO and president of Producers Wealth, where we help people create, protect, and multiply their wealth outside of Wall Street.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I love that. I love hearing people's stories. And I'd like to ask you, I guess, where your investing philosophy comes from, or what inspires your investment philosophy. And I'll give you an example for myself. Growing up, we weren't necessarily a very wealthy family, middle class. My dad saved his money, but during harsh recessions, he lost his job a number of times, and it was stressful on the family. It was this moment where, we could be poor, we couldn't pay our bills. We were always had the money to pay our bills because he saved, but, we were on the verge of, burning through savings and this risk of being poor, and somebody ultimately being able to, at their own will, pull the plug on a career that you're depending on. And I guess for me, my motivation for what I do ultimately started from the fear of being poor, and and it's evolved from there. But what else has driven you to do what you do? Is there some sort of deep down motivation that says, I need to wake up and I need to be motivated to get ahead?
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there, and I felt the same thing in my life growing up too. That there was no control, right? So it was almost like our family was beholden to the economy. So if there is a recession, as you've mentioned, then now everybody's tightening and it's going through tough times and through hard times. So I always looked at that, and then I always looked at what the ultra wealthy and billionaire families were doing. And it seems that it doesn't really matter what happened. These guys figured out exactly what to do when markets go up, down, and sideways, recessions, depressions. They were always on the right side of it because they had full control. So that was the big thing for me. And I think one of the things that have driven me how things really work. Maybe you went through the same kind of the same thing, but you first get a little bit angry when you read this, and then you go, okay, so now what? Now I have this data. I understand how the game works. What am I going to do with it? And then you come up with solutions to try and figure out how to play the game as the best players in the game is playing it. So that's why I kind of I looked at, from a wealth standpoint, what a lot of billionaires were doing, and I kind of had a little fun with it, and I call it the opposite wealth playbook. From drawing on a Seinfeld kind of episode where George walks into the diner and says to Jerry, everything in my life that I've done up until this point, I should have done the complete opposite. So now a lot of your listeners might be thinking like, well, what is the opposite? What do they do? And I mentioned the term opposite because it's not just billionaires and the ultra wealthy families as opposed to the average person. They don't do the same thing, but only better, right? Warren Buffett doesn't have a 401k, and he just knows how to allocate these massive inflated mutual funds better than everyone else. They also don't do a lot different. They do the complete opposite. So for instance, the first one is from a wealth plan point of view. The average person focuses on accumulation, right? They fall into the Wall Street model of, trying to accumulate as much money as they can, hoping that it would be there in 30 to 40 years. They, by the way, hand it over to an advisor. And then in 30 to 40 years' time, they hope that they're going to turn it into income, where the ultra wealthy and billionaires look at income right away, cash flow. That's the first thing. So complete opposite approaches there. And as far as just from wealth strategic point, the average person focuses on products. We always hear the newest shiny toy, mutual fund this, ETF this and that. And the average person really gets drawn into this, where if you look at what billionaires are doing, these guys look at systems and processes. So they look at an overall wealth infrastructure, and then the systems and processes that they put together with their team, that's what drives their success. Then they integrate vehicles, and then there's products. So where the average person focuses on the products first, these guys focus on that last, right? So that's why it doesn't matter which asset class they're in, they're successful because of this. And then also from a focus standpoint, the average person always chases returns, right? They think, and this is basically from a financial education standpoint, and I know you and I will probably discuss this as well, but from a financial education, a lot of people think that the way to get wealthy is to chase higher returns and always chase the thing that's going to make you more money. Where the ultra wealthy and billionaires know that the first thing that they have to do is they have to protect. They have to protect. Yeah, exactly. Warren, everybody uses these quotes of Warren Buffett of rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, follow rule number 1. And, there's many of these different quotes, but it doesn't really sink in what they do. And they focus on protecting what they have, being economically efficient, not plugging all of these leaks in their businesses and their personal economy, and then they look at a consistent return through these systems and processes. So where the average person is just putting their money on black, hoping that that's the next magic bullet that's going to cure it. And then, I've touched on a couple of things here, but diversification versus focus too. The average person thinks diversification is just throwing money in the stock market. And hey, I'm in real estate, I'm in this and this and that, where a lot of the billionaires invest directly into assets. So they're in real estate hard assets. They're in commodities. They actually have gold and invest in oil directly in the companies. Where it's not just a magical ETF that you're buying. And the other thing, the last thing that I will say, also, which I've seen in the differences between them and some of the stuff that I've tried to incorporate, is knowing the wealth laws, right? So the average person still is playing the game as it was played before 1971, before the Nixon shock, right, and taking the world off the gold standard, where the ultra wealthy and billionaires, they know the new game. And the name of the game is money in motion needs to stay in motion, otherwise it dies. Money needs to keep moving constantly. And what gives money value, really? I mean, besides the market, from a philosophical standpoint, but what gives money value is its ability to go into the marketplace and procure assets or purchase things, right? So they know that the money needs to keep moving through the economy constantly, because the older money gets, there's more and more money being printed and coming in, chasing that old money. So the older money has to increase the speed at which is moving through the economy and the velocity of it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's
thought-provoking.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very thought-provoking. Interesting description on where money derives its purchasing power, and I agree with you, spot on. So I love the name Cashflow Ninja. We've already touched on this, and it's interesting. People work their whole lives, and if they're lucky, they save $1 million going forward, and they're hoping to invest that $1 million and make 5%, let's say, may have $50,000 a year. And I guess when you think about it in that way, cash flow, if you have cash flow, it's equivalent to having piles of money in the bank. If you think about it from what it takes to have that cash flow, and maybe that's exactly what it is. But I guess I want to emphasize how important even making $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month. It's not that easy. And if you were to attempt to do that, through a simple means, trying to do that at the bank or some other sort of bonds, in some sort of safe type of investment, you need a lot of money in the bank. So cash flow should not be discounted, and it's very important. So anything to add to that as we continue to move through this interview here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to tie into the way that the economy works, like with cash flow and what the ultra wealthy and the billionaires are doing. What I would say to that too is, there's a reason they don't teach those strategies in schools. They teach people how to basically become good, obedient workers in schools, through this Prussian school system that you're in. And they don't teach you any of the other higher level or skill sets to go out there and create cash flow from certain asset classes, because that doesn't fit into the business model of Wall Street, right? Because if you were able to need to do that, you wouldn't just throw all your money into a 401k and give the rest to a financial advisor. So, cash flow, I'll add another thing to that. From a risk management standpoint, and this hits home for me because I see what's going on right now too, just in South Africa with a lot of people that in my family. From a risk management standpoint, you obviously have political risk, you have economical risk, you have market risk, and then institutional risk are like the four big ones. Political risk, if you just accumulated money, and just a side note, people think it cannot happen in the United States, right? It's like always that mentality. Well, it can happen here. Just think about it this way, like my parents and family members that are there. So at the moment, the currency has been devalued a lot. So let's just, my parents are between 65 and 70. So if you accumulated a ton of money and just followed that model, they did all the right things, and a lot of people have done the right things. Now, towards the end of their life, you get an idiot coming into office that's the president or some politician or something like that, or a central banker, which is even worse, and makes horrible decisions. And all of a sudden, just like that, the amount of money that you have has been completely devaluated. So you can't combat that inflation. So again, it ties back into that no control, right?
So you touched on education there, and it hit close to home, especially the legacy education. We've done some research here, and for me, I just see the scam that's going on with the college education system. It's a dinosaur system. It's the government ran system that they have to continue to feed. They can't allow it to fail. So the kids go into elementary school, middle school, high school, and the goal for these teachers is to get these kids into college, and the cost of tuition is continuing to outpace inflation. And they're teaching old things, especially in an era where information is as free and available as ever. And it's another thing I love about technology is that the internet, this decentralized economy, is giving information out to everybody, no matter what your status is in life. If you're wealthy, if you're poor, you have access to basically the same information as everybody else, no matter what your social status is. And that's leveling the playing field for so many people. But there's a lot of people going down that pathway to the conventional system, and it'll work out for some, but for others, they're just mounting on piles and piles of debt that they'll just tread water for years and years and years before they ever pay it off. And it's just such an unfortunate situation. So I'd love for you to speak to that some here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a couple of really good points. So the first thing that I will say too is when you look at the landscape right now, one of the things that I loved about the United States, and I've been fortunate enough to have traveled quite a bit, is the upward mobility in the United States. That was one of the first things that struck me when I came here, is someone that can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you come from. That doesn't determine your lot or where you're going to end up. We have all these folks coming from rags to riches, right? And the internet and technology and the education provided on the internet for free has made this global. I mean, like you said, a lot of the education that was just previously reserved for a certain class of folks or people that can buy it through access, it's now available online. And this ties into this huge scam. I mean, you talk about a scam. Holy smokes. The college scam is, and there's more and more people talking about it, which is great, because I mean, I'm in awe. I'm almost speechless of how they pull this off. And this is propaganda. This is what you can do by brainwashing not just one generation of people, but many generations of 3 or 4 of them, where people think that they have to go to college to enable to get anywhere in life. They don't teach you anything there anymore, besides a victim mentality, in my opinion. It's the only thing that you're going to learn in college these days. There's no skills. I mean, and that takes into the transition. The world has changed. We left the industrial age behind. We went into the information age, and the economies have aligned and changed with it. We are no longer a jobs economy. I chuckle every time people, the big announcement about jobs numbers and so forth, because it's really a skills economy. People are going to have to learn skills to add value to the marketplace. And basically a lot of folks are going to be freelancing. I mean, we've already seen the growth. I haven't checked the latest statistics on that trend, but I'm sure we could see a massive uptick into that. So that's the new way of working is people are going to do that. You can work remote, but you're going to have to learn a skill. That's the thing that you're going to learn. It's quite funny to look at a lot of folks, because I'm sure that I was the same way too. You graduate university, and all of a sudden you think, oh, okay, now I'm going to go go into the marketplace and everybody's going to want me, right? Everybody's going to want to get a job. And you look at these folks and there's no skills taught in it. So you have to basically start from scratch to teach them everything that they need to know to be able to operate and work in this new environment. And I think I mentioned the Prussian school system earlier. I mean, so we're still teaching folks and educating people as if we're in the industrial age. I mean, we still have bells going off in schools telling you when to eat, when to stand up and go to another class. I mean, it's just absurd. And then the whole college thing, which is really, really sad, is at the age of 18, these children have to make decisions that will basically, I'm going to say it's going to set them back 20 to 25 years. And I'm being very, very conservative there just with what lies ahead for them. Because don't let me get started about the loans and how they're structured. I mean, a lot of these folks have paid, $20,000 on loans that were $40,000 and they still owe 40, right? So there's a lot of different things on the back end there, but they're going into huge amount of debts, and now they're stuck. That limits decisions. It limits starting a family. It limits purchasing a residence or a house, right? All the different things, investing money. So it's a huge, huge scam. I think a lot of people are waking up to it. I think a lot of people are realizing that they don't have to go into debt by $50,000 to $60,000. Or even a six-figure debt and then go out and start their life after university.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And for many of the baby boomers, we talked about this, the system somewhat worked for them. But, during the 2008 financial crisis, they actually, a lot of them went back to school and dealt with the same problems the millennials dealt with, like the spike in loans that the baby boomer generation, you just take that alone, it just skyrocketed after the 2008 financial crisis. Whereas prior, when most of them actually went to school, it worked out. It wasn't that expensive. They graduated and then they did okay. But when that reset happened, obviously prices were much higher and they got into the same mess a lot of the millennials are in right now, which is kind of an interesting point. But to add to what you're saying, and just, I guess, the importance of how to navigate through this new economy, what do we teach our future generations? It's, this, obviously you have the billionaires or the millionaires, these first generation wealth builders that, understand the value, the importance of creating wealth, creating value, offering wealth. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on passing that on to future generations to ensure that this lives on and doesn't die once it is birthed from the first generation?
I love that question, by the way, because this is a passion of mine, an absolute passion. And one of the things that I looked at was when studying billionaires, and especially these family offices, like based on the Rockefeller family office model, right, is they don't just pass on money to future generations. They pass on guidelines, principles, and values. So there's a lot of knowledge that's being passed on, not just financial means or money to them. And that's why they're able to hold on to this money. They're able to grow it with every generation and so forth. To touch on the first direct question was, what skills do we need to teach them? And we have a massive uphill battle here. I would say the first thing that you need to teach folks is self-reliance and the ability to take care of yourself and your family. And this goes against pretty much everything that's being taught in society, everything that's being taught in schools, everything that's put out there in a lot of different media formats, right? So a lot of the things is, the government's going to take care of you. Big brother and big sister is going to take care of you. You're going to go to school. You're going to work at a job. Your company is going to take care of you. You're going to give money to your financial advisor and put it in the 401k. And, if you don't have a government job working for the government, and those statistics are scary already, the amount of Americans just working directly for the government. And then these institutions are going to take care of you. So it's a massive uphill battle to come out then and say to people, listen, everything that you've been taught is absolutely, nonsense. You need to be able to take care of yourself and be a free, independent human being, thinking for yourself, be a critical thinker, take control of your destiny, and be able to take care of yourself and your family, regardless of what's happening in the environment that you're in. So that's the first thing that I would say those are the skill sets. And then the other skill sets I would say is actually of studying and learning. There's a lot of things that they don't teach you in schools. They don't teach you critical thinking. I mean, and there's many reasons for that, because otherwise most people will start to figure out what's going on. They don't teach you problem solving. When you start businesses in the new economy, the reason why businesses exist is to solve problems for people in the marketplace and or help them create an outcome, right? Solve a problem or a pain, or get them to, feel better, look better, get an experience, and so forth. So they don't teach a lot of problem solving. It ties into critical thinking, and they don't teach folks how to be resourceful. So what billionaires, for instance, do is these people are not the smartest people. Sure, there are, I'm not going to throw a blanket, make a blanket statement and say they're not smart. They are very resourceful. Who was it? Henry Ford that said, "Ask me any question," and he picks up a phone and calls one of his advisors, and they'll get you the answer. They understand how to get access and how to be resourceful in solving problems and challenges. So I would say the first thing, self-reliance, reclaim your independence as a free human being, and then also critical thinking, problem solving, resourcefulness, and then the values and stuff that you need to pass on would be to tie into that. Understand the philosophy. There's a huge battle of ideas right now, and one of the things that I've learned too, studying these folks, is philosophy is huge. How you see the world goes a long way about how you live your life. Understand who you are and what you stand for. Everyone has to stand for something, have core beliefs, and then build principles and values, which are just rules that you live your life by, and guidelines for you and your family. I think once you have all those established and set up, you should have a solid foundation and a springboard to go out there and live the life that you want to live with your family.
I love it. It's good advice there. MC Lobshore, Cashflow Ninja. If you would like, please give us some closing thoughts here as we conclude this interview, and let people know what they can find if they visit your work and where they can go to find it.
Yeah, thank you. And this has been fantastic. I always enjoy our conversations, Kenneth. So thank you so much for connecting and having me on. And I would just say to listeners out there that this is an amazing, amazing time to be alive. If we look at what we have available right now through technology, the ability to connect, the ability to learn, books, read books online. Most of the stuff is free. I mean, YouTube, I can list a whole bunch of resources of just where you can go and study and learn skills that you'll be able to help other folks. And again, keeping up with the trends, understanding your environment, ton of resources and education online that any person with internet connection can access. If you're interested in to learn more about cash flow strategies and in real estate, commodities, businesses, paper assets, digital and crypto assets, and more, I interview a ton of cash flow ninjas, which I really enjoy and learn from. You're welcome to learn side by side with me from these Cashflow Ninjas. You can check it out at cashflowninja.com. And also, I've hosted a webinar masterclass presentation where I share how you can create, protect, and multiply your wealth in any economy outside of Wall Street. You can check that out at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com.
All right, sir. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it. And again, I love having you on. So feel free to come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kenneth.